I used to think the books were canon to the games. That itself shouldn't really be shocking given how I mentioned the books at least once in all of my videos, but after Secret of the Mimic had debunked the possibility of the short stories being attached to the game's canon, I've been making it a goal of mine to look back and build out different solutions to questions. Even though Frights and Tales may not happen one-to-one in the game story, just the mere thought of these stories being written and introducing new plot points or further explanation of details that wasn't explained in the game story should signal that they are still valuable. Just like how the novel trilogy is used to help lore discussion, it's just a matter of seeing where you can fill in the blanks without contradicting the already set up story in the game's timeline. But even then, it's important to acknowledge that the games will have priority over another timeline's events. So why do I mention all of this? Well, a lot of this actually stems back to the one you shouldn't have killed. For the longest time, I believed in Andrew Toyschnink, even if his addition to the stories seemed rather abrupt to introduce a 7th missing kid during the supposed epilogue to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and most likely hurting Cassidy's involvement overall. The Stitchroid Stingers were built to accommodate the aftermath of FFPS, even though this also greatly impacted Henry's sacrifices as well. The man in Room 1280 revealed to us that the hell Afton was going through was actually a nightmare created by the vengeful spirit. They had found his charred body in the remains of FFPS, and he ended up staying at Hercules Hospital for a couple years until Father Blythe had come into the picture, ultimately helping Afton in escaping the nightmare by having a part of his corpse explode in a Fazbear storage facility, spreading his agony onto various Fazbear products and indirectly causing Andrew to become shattered as well by this happening. After Afton reveals himself to have attached himself to Andrew during the attempt to destroy the Stitchwraith body, Jig tries to stop Afton from taking Andrew and successfully does so by freeing him from Afton's grip and sending him away completely, with Afton escaping and launching the body of the Stitchwraith a few feet away, and the agony-infected pieces they collected along with trash started to collect into one place to create a new body for Afton, describing himself as, "I am Agony." Afton is killed off with the help of Detective Larson, shoving the puppet mask that Charlie still possessed, being also found in the FFPS fire site, into the Agony rabbit trash monster he had become, being destroyed and falling apart in a lake, with the puppet mask finally losing its tear streaks. This is probably the most simplified explanation I can give regarding at least Afton's story, but I digress. We return back to the game story, and Andrew isn't mentioned once in any future entry in the Steelwell games, or even in the past besides the hints towards the 7th victim in UCN. So we're left with a couple of options that I don't really believe in, but under this theory, I will be presenting today, Cassidy is the best pick for the vengeful spirit. This will be the start of a really long look back lore series where we go through the many different options and various solutions for the lore to hopefully allow you to come to your own opinion, rather if you believe what I will be presenting today or if you have your own take on it, bringing us back to the end of Ultimate Custom Night. With the Stingers never happening, nothing mentioned previously occurred at all, but there's still evidence for this to be a dream. In the soundtrack of Ultimate Custom Night, there are a couple notable track names: Hibernating Evil, Sleep No More, and Where Dreams Die. But not only that, Nightmarion, funnily enough, mentions that what Afton is experiencing is a nightmare.
This is a nightmare that you won't wake from. The nightmare is just beginning.
Had Cassidy actually listened to Old Man Consequences and rested their soul, the events of the series would have most likely concluded. However, we as Afton didn't stop playing. Upon completing 4920 mode, we are given this very odd Golden Freddy cutscene as he twitches into the void. This itself can be interpreted as two things: Cassidy leaving, or it's Afton escaping the nightmare. But for someone who's apparently wanting to rest and move on now, these moments seem to imply otherwise. When we've seen Golden Freddy remain idle throughout the series, this moment seems to symbolize something we haven't yet physically seen from this character: anger.
It was a budget thing, I guess. It was just junk. Circuit boards and things like that. Looked pretty old. Somehow though, there was usable code on some of it. It seemed to take hold by itself. Things started changing. But then, he started appearing. At least that's what Jeremy said.
This is Glitchtrap, a scanned virus that came from an old shoddy circuit board that immediately manifested itself as the Yellow Rabbit, and appears to be a replication of William Afton's identity. The core gameplay of Hell Bonnet finds itself back in the FNAF 1 through Sister Location era titles, with multiple references to tragedies caused by Afton, even ones directly replicated by Glitchtrap itself, with the main goal of this Yellow Rabbit to find a suitable host in order to perform a digital conscience transfer that will allow him to escape this digital prison back into the real world through a vessel, with a piece of the victim being trapped inside the game itself. which is funnily enough what happened to us during Help Wanted. Now the most interesting aspect of this is actually the reveal of us being trapped because in Curse of Dreadbear we learn our fate. The original vanity mess we discovered in Corn Maze was the key to learning about what started to happen directly after failing to remove the virus. We are now working with it, even going above and beyond to develop an identity just to aid it. This DLC is shown to have a huge emphasis on Halloween related activities, with multiple connections and references back to FNAF 4 and Afton, but there's actually a lot more to discover here. Fall Fest 83, our first introduction and teaser to the overarching plotline of Fall Fest. However, what made this one so special is the various ties it had to William Afton, with the FNAF 4 house being present on top of a hill, plus containing a chance to see Glitchtrap himself dancing around nearby it. Additionally, an Easter egg can be triggered by replicating a step from the transfer sequence during Help Wanted's ending, where you press a button on the side of the monitor that activates the purple lights on the truck located behind us. But there's still more: the Red Lake. On random chance, you might just be able to see Dreadbear rising from the Red Lake and making its way to the barn. Something you can connect back to Old Man Consequences with, and most likely representing Golden Freddy rising from the lake instead of descending into it, along with another Golden Freddy related Easter egg, which can be achieved by randomly getting 3 of the clown posters in the barn. By hitting them all with darts triggers the It's Me Easter egg. However, one of the main oddities from Curse of Dreadbear would be the gravestones. Upon viewing them from where the player usually stands, you can only make out 4 or 5 gravestones, but taking the camera out of bounds reveals to us 9 gravestones, with the main one being an emphasis on Glitchtrap. The main problem coming from this is how exactly you're supposed to connect the gravestones to a specific set of victims, and it remains impossible to tie a specific set of characters to it, but the most important detail is actually what's above it: Dreadbear towering over it. Although I don't think Dreadbear is meant to be the literal Golden Freddy, as it's clearly just a reference to Frankenstein's monster. The dialogue mentioned in the minigame where we give Dreadbear a freaking brain states that,
"Today, we are using science to pervert the mysteries of life and reanimate the inanimate."
This would usually be something you ignore. However, using what Dreadbear has been shown to do, it's clearly meant to symbolize both Cassidy and Bite Victim, even if they aren't actually present, and this won't be the last time for either of them in the modern era. Tying us back to Pizza Party. This is where I myself started to genuinely question myself. Upon further inspection of the scene shown to us right before the credits roll, we are shown to be lured in by Glitchtrap, and it is here we are seen carrying Freddy's microphone, implying we are currently Freddy. A direct replication of Gabriel being lured. This was the first big example of what should supposedly be the Mimic knowing more than it should. And with Curse of Dreadbear adding more fuel to the fire, it starts to become apparent that maybe it isn't exactly an AI, that perhaps there's something more going on. But we can't jump there just yet. We first need to talk about the prequel to Security Breach. Although we are unsure how much of its lore is reliable thanks to most of the important information being scrapped to content, it is directly mentioned in the therapy tapes and Security Breach with some slight information changes, so the general story is probably still relevant.
Who are you talking to in these? No one. Sometimes I talk with Lewis. He's in the marketing department. He's nice, I guess. Yes, I see Lewis here. But there's someone else.
Directly after the events of Help Wanted, we learn more about the VR player, with the reveal of her name being Vanessa A, and potentially is the reveal of her birth year, which is 1997, thanks to her email tag being Nessie97. FNAF AR was revealed, as mentioned earlier, to be before the main events of Security Breach, or well, more specifically in between the events of the retro CDs. Vanessa is shown to be actively trying to get into the Pizzaplex by sabotaging Funtime service workers, who unfortunately scanned on a board that was potentially implanted by Vanessa, allowing the opportunity to override control by giving them a false sense of security of her trying to help them. But in reality, it was an opportunity for her to transfer her current working position to a security guard at the Pizzaplex, unfortunately being able to accomplish this task. Through the emails, we're also given glimpses into how Glitchtrap has affected her, showing various signs of reluctance to continue but appears to be forced into doing so, and is constantly threatened if she doesn't comply by Glitchtrap. Weirdly enough, Glitchtrap actually does go out of his way to mess with the actual services themselves, making all of the animatronics more aggressive in the process, but also managing to create a Springtrap animatronic with some very suspicious lines.
You will not be spared. You will not be saved. Let's see how many times you can be pulled apart and put back together again.
These two lines are directly connected to Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear, with the dialogue being lines set in Ultimate Custom Night, one that is a direct reference.
You will not be spared. You will not be saved.
and the other one with Nightmare Fredbear being somewhat reworded.
Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again.
Which the Mimic shouldn't be capable of knowing, as unless M2 was the one in UCN, Afton would be the only one to know about that. Now outside of that, there's actually one plot hole I want to cover now before we go into Security Breach. It's regarding how exactly the virus infected the entire Pizzaplex. Although Vanessa was the only one directly shown to be controlled by the virus, we don't really know how Glitchtrap ended up taking over the entire Pizzaplex system. Well, funnily enough, there's a short story about this that gives us the exact answer we're looking for, even though Vanny herself is never acknowledged once in these books. Gregory does though. More specifically known as GGY or Dr. Rabbit, Rab for short, Greg is revealed to be actively tampering with the Pizzaplex and the animatronics, along with leaving behind signatures in the code that ends up with GGY being caught onto by Tony, who was doing all of this because he wanted to write an investigation story for his assignment, and originally his only goal was to uncover who's behind all the high scores in the Pizzaplex, and accidentally learns more than he should have, showing to us that GGY was onto him. He was warned to let it go, but doesn't stop, and it was revealed that GGY was actively luring therapists into the Pizzaplex and having them murdered, as showcased in the retro CDs, with Rab being revealed to be someone named Greg, who rewrote this story to be a fantasy story. Noting that there is a very specific dialogue piece about GGY being the wizard's favorite apprentice, and also a reference most likely to Burntrap in the Blob, which states, an animatronic supervillain who went into battle with a tentacled monster. By the end of the story, Greg tells Tony to come to the Pizzaplex to most likely also be murdered. This plot point is followed up in the retro CDs, but I thought it was important to provide some additional context, because now we have a security breach to attend to.
I can't talk about this. He said he would always be watching. He could be here, or there, or anywhere in between.
So, a quick recap because you probably heard this a million times already. Most of our time is spent with Gregory, who is written to be clueless yet knows more than he should at the same time. Alongside that, our overarching threat is Vanessa, aka the Dancing Rabbit Lady, and is actually being assisted by the other Glamrocks in order to capture and kill Gregory. Glamrock Freddy is our parental figure and guide through the Pizzaplex as we must attempt to get out at 6 AM, but as Gregory comes to soon discover, there's actually a lot more going on here than he realizes, which is what I would say if he didn't know that already.
Freddy, if I leave now, nothing will change, will it? There will be more disappearances.
Alright, got all that? Good. Now let's jump back to the reluctant follower, aka Vanessa. Glitchtrap's control over her has led her to the Pizzaplex after doing everything she did in FNAF AR to get the security guard position at the Pizzaplex, with a duffel bag pointing out how she was unqualified for the job, yet was recommended by a higher up. Vanessa is directly responsible for carrying out Glitchtrap's demands, which included the usage of the Snapbots, being the direct cause of the Snapbot massacre that occurred at the Pizzaplex that wiped out the human staff, and is also to blame for clearing out the path using Glamrock Freddy that led into the FFPS building below Roxy Raceway, and remains the most likely candidate for being the one to transfer the virus into the body of Burntrap. A majority of questions actually stem from the retro CDs themselves, with Vanessa making the connection AR being relevant to Security Breach by mentioning Lewis, but most importantly the fact that CDs take place during AR. However, one of the biggest details that can easily be overlooked is regarding something we learned in FNAF AR, the last name of Vanessa ending with an A. During one of the retro CDs, we learned about her father, Bill. By simply understanding how last names work, Bill's name is also most likely Bill A. So keep that in mind for now, because we first need to focus on Patient 46. Patient 46 is a nonverbal second patient to that of Vanessa, whose tapes are marked as 71. Patient 46's actions or emotions throughout the tapes are pointed out by the therapist in order to create a mystery. However, some of the most important information that is to be gathered here would be the direct call out of them being a hacker and was caught on the Pizzaplex cameras communicating with an individual who has rabbit ears. The other most notable thing is the therapist is suddenly disappearing without a trace, with one of them being reportedly mangled by machinery, where it's directly stated how they are unmoved by this information. Patient 46 is also called out on lying about their family, with it being stated how he grew up in a relatively happy home. Alongside that, we learn about Patient 46's connections to sending out subroutines into the Pizzaplex system, stating that it was a glitch of sorts, directly connecting us back to the story of GGY, where as previously mentioned, it is stated that GGY was actively tampering with the Pizzaplex and animatronics, and using this information, and using the information gathered from the tapes, Gregory is the most likely suspect for the identity of of GGY. Yes, the same Gregory we play as in Security Breach was most likely under the possession of Glitchtrap at some point under the identity of GGY, who is also shown to hold the high scores in all of the arcade cabinets scattered across the Pizzaplex, making Gregory single-handedly responsible for why this creature is infecting the entire Pizzaplex. Right, so why do I mention this? The most important element of the retro CDs is family, with Bill manipulating Vanessa into helping him win the custody battle, and her mother most likely killing herself after that happened. With the therapist stating how she can follow instructions perfectly prior to this most likely wasn't the first time, with Vanessa even whispering to herself that
I was supposed to be a good girl.
However, with Gregory on the other hand, not experiencing even an ounce of reluctance that Vanessa has with Glitchtrap in her head, Gregory actually appears to be rather unbothered. He is shown to be unmoved by the news of the therapist's deaths, even slightly hinting at the fact the last therapist mentioned in the retro CDs was gonna die. Gregory genuinely appears to be doing this for the love of the game, even going out of his way to willingly lie about his family, and appears to be avoidant when the lie was pointed out. But back on topic. Throughout the Pizzaplex, there are multiple callbacks to Fredbear's and connections to the Afton family, which wouldn't be the first time either, given in Help Wanted, the entire Curse of Dreadbear DLC is centered around the Fall Fest taking place in 1983, with the FNAF 4 house being directly present, but most importantly, Glitchtrap shown to be nearby it. However, one of the details that stick out is regarding Golden Freddy, and with the influence of Security Breach, it remains clear how much Afton's history is relevant here, especially under the assumption of Vanessa being an Afton, meaning that she is the fourth child of the Afton family and really the last living Afton family member as far as we know of, but I digress. If Bill is really Afton, then this is just another identity William Afton went under, and as we have been shown from different media in the FNAF series, he loves doing that. And the irony of the situation is that Glitchtrap is the digital consciousness of Vanessa's father, forcing her to do tasks she clearly doesn't want to do, but is forced to do them anyways. So there's a double meaning here, with the therapist pointing out how she has to confront her trauma in order to not be triggered by it anymore. Ultimately bringing us to Princess Quest. First introduced in the Help Wanted mobile port as compensation for 99% of the game just not being ported over, we play as a princess whose quest is either to most likely defeat the Agony Rabbit blob or to save Vanessa. Doesn't really matter because every one of these things is achieved. After encountering the Agony blob for the first time, we hear voice lines from Afton saying, with it also being what the text below deciphered to. With Princess Quest 2 directly continuing from where we left off, we now find ourselves in a cave and eventually making our way back to the room of the first game, and instead of resting, we enter the purple glitch spot on the door, taking us to the inside of Freddy's, where the events of Princess Quest 3 continue from. We find ourselves in a recreation of the Help Wanted hub area map for the most part, with the corn maze level being recreated on one side of the pizza place. We search for the Vanny Mask and Glitchtrap plush that ultimately gives us the key to free Vanessa from Glitchtrap's control, weakening him. Funny enough, this ending wasn't even canon at first, but now it is, so you have to remember this information for later, because it is finally time to discuss probably the most debated part of the modern lore, Burntrap and Co. Instead of playing Princess Quest and naturally following the 100% upgraded Glamrock Freddy route, we are able to venture down into the sinkhole, revealing to us the remains of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator location, which within the structure contains what can be assumed to be Afton, which immediately brings up questions regarding the ending of UCN. Now, if it was a nightmare, then him being around is justified still, as UCN's events would just be caused directly by Toystink. However, the main problem we run into is regarding what Ruin shows us, with the Burntrap ending being referenced in drawing by Gregory, and the Princess Quest 3 cabinet being slain by the princess. We wouldn't know for sure how Afton ended up as a digital consciousness that far back, or the motivations behind it outside of finding him in FPS, which Vanessa successfully did. What we can assume is what he wants is control. With the virus Gregory spreads all across the Pizzaplex, most likely being the Glitchtrap virus, he would have that now. However, nothing is directly stated and can just be one of many possibilities based on the ongoing story and clues, as most things in the story goes.
Cassie, it's me. I think I need to explain a few things. You were never supposed to go to the Pizzaplex. That thing in the sinkhole tricked you. I really don't know what it is, but it's been trapped down here a really long time.
During the events of the Ruin DLC, we go deeper down under Burntrap's lair, where we find the Mexus machine in the room the Mimic is trapped in. Knowing this game directly follows the events of the Vanny Good ending, aka Princess Quest 3, Vanessa, Gregory, and the head of Glamrock Freddy escape the Pizzaplex. But the most important information is located in the details surrounding this very room. The most obvious one is Gregory's backpack that is left behind here, with most of the entrances into the Mimic room being collapsed in, but also most importantly taking the camera and flying out of bounds and around the room, we can find a very conveniently placed claw mark that matches the hand of Burntrap. What most likely happened here is that Gregory managed to lure Burntrap down into this room, and being the little speed demon that he is, trapped it inside and made his escape as the area collapsed in on itself, leaving behind the walkie-talkie inside the room Burntrap was trapped in. Now, the most confusing portion of this is that if it's literally Afton, why is the Mimic shown to be here instead? Well, let me explain. The Mex's machine, aka known as Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage, is the main threat that Cassie goes up against as she ventures further into the ruins of the Pizzaplex in order to find Gregory, which only appears when she uses the Vanny mask, directly connecting her to the Pizzaplex network. Mex's is presented as a firewall/antivirus and has a set of nodes set up across the Pizzaplex, meaning the Mex's machine currently has control over the entire network. Now, what does this mean? If this handprint really is supposed to show Burntrap getting trapped, that means after the activation of the Mex's machine, the Glitchtrap virus was kicked out of the body since it's a digital entity roaming the network, meaning the Mimic was back in control, aka meaning the Mimic was always the endoskeleton that was wearing Afton's suit and corpse, but the Glitchtrap virus was the one in control. It's a lot to process, but as John FNAF says,
need more proof?
And it's in help on it too. One of the primary pieces was the reveal of the Mimic program being used in the endoskeletons we see in the Pizzaplex, which means the Mimic itself already had influence across the Pizzaplex, making what Gregory did let Glitchtrap take control of everything. But more importantly, Glitchtrap is shown to use the staff bots to kill Cassie's dad, linking back to what happened during the staff-only incident, where Vanny is also shown to use the staff bots to her advantage during the bad ending route of the Vanny ending. Most importantly, up until this exact moment, we were being told by Helpby to continue doing our tasks, and eventually over time we built together Fast Force. Being directly told by Helpby to open the gifts, and once we fully accomplished the goal of collecting these figures to create the amalgamation of Fast Force figures, it was revealed to be a trick by Glitchtrap all along to kill Cassie's dad by the hands of the staff bots, with the charger pod being a direct reference to Burntrap most likely. And after all of this happens, Helpby makes no effort to task you to do anything anymore. You've completed all the tasks, and he is on vacation. This entire time, Glitchtrap was pretending to be Helpby in order to trick us into doing his bidding, which is something we can connect back to Ruin with Helpby. The neural network assistant has two sides to it, one that's pretending to be it, and the one that is literally it. For most of the game, you can assume it's the same Mimic, but in reality, during the Mex's catwalk encounter, we can actually see it interact with Grimmick.
Dad, with my help, I have been helping with the signal jammer. That rabbit thing won't bother you anymore.
Which for something that is the same appears to be verbally disagreeing with itself. But also given how Glitchtrap is the only known digital consciousness at this point to be freely roaming the neural network, it makes sense for it to be pretending to be Helpby. But of course we need to halt here to discuss Princess Quest 4 and how it's involved into this. Princess Quest 4 can only be accessed after collecting all the memory plushies of the MCI and Charlie, plus collecting the glitch token from Mystic Hippo, with the memory plushies having to be all collected, which is the same as what we had to do with Fast Force. However, this time we're being handed them directly to us by Glitchtrap. This would be two direct references already to having to put pieces together in order to get killed by Afton and then to kill Afton. The existence of Princess Quest 4 was revealed to us when we had to open the door using the Fast Wrench to turn off the AR inhibitor, where it's only playable in the neural network, but does physically exist in the real world. But also showing us the past 3 Princess Quest games were actually beaten in order for this one to be active. Two very important things are shown to us in this game. We, as Cassie's dad, control the princess within the network itself in order to free ourselves from Glitchtrap's prison, and after slashing ourselves, we are given the princess's sword, and the princess is no longer moving, just idly watching, and we are also capable of killing her, poofing out of existence. Now, if you were keeping track of the theorist community during the Security Breach era, people data mined the game and originally found the name of the princess to be Cassidy, however being one of the only things removed entirely from the files. And for a while, the topic of debate has been if the princess is meant to literally be someone. Now, what I think personally about what was being shown in Princess Quest 4 is that the princess isn't supposed to be someone specifically. If she was supposed to be someone, then us killing her would have effectively killed whatever was portraying itself as the princess. The princess is most likely meant to be a vessel, and since the arcade cabinets are shown to be connected to the network itself, and us freeing Vanessa during Princess Quest 3 added more proof to that, I think there is actually a deeper narrative going on with these cabinets. However, that'll be something I'll be looking more in depth into very soon. More importantly is what the memory plushies are used for. The order of lighting the flames is as follow: Chica, Foxy, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, and Puppet. We give up the Vanny mask in exchange for the Glitchtrap plush, the last remaining bit of him, and it's here the reveal of Vanny is also still roaming the network. Even after Vanessa was freed, and ultimately was the one to deal the final blow to Glitchtrap, showing Vanny overcoming her father's grip on her after all this time. This is where we find ourselves back in Ruin, because now we have to work out placement. The first ending of Help Wanted 2 ends with Maskbot handing over Cassie's dad's mask to Cassie, ultimately revealing that this game is a prequel to Ruin, and for a while I thought that was it. Until one of my theorist friends pointed out something. In the Mex's room, if you were to explore with the Vanny mask on, we find 6 nodes already pre-disabled, which is completely odd knowing that every single node prior to this was still enabled. How did these get disabled? And right before we go down here, the Help By assistant stops talking to us as we exit the save zone. And both variants of Help By are never heard from again. Going under the idea of Help By being Glitchtrap, this throws a wrench into the problem. However, I think I figured out why this happened. The second half of Princess Quest 4. There are exactly 6 lights that need to be lit in order to progress to kill Glitchtrap. Guess what is shown in Ruin? The 6 nodes are destroyed and we're able to shut off Mexes, who is ironically also a rabbit. Since Princess Quest 4 is directly capable of interacting with the network, I do think Cassie's dad was most likely responsible for unintentionally aiding the Mimic and freeing him, but also killing Glitchtrap. So the second half of Help Wanted 2 is most likely happening back to back with Ruin, explaining why these nodes were already pre-destroyed, as Glitchtrap was just killed off moments ago, effectively marking the end of Glitchtrap altogether. However, there's still a lot to cover regarding external characters, such as Fiona, M2, Tiger, Edwin, and the entire Fazbear Entertainment history with MCM. The Glitchtrap Burntrap debate has a lot of different theories surrounding it that heavily relies on a lot of external factors, and trust me, it is a lot to cover. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you think I'm flat out wrong, or what theories you believe, or if I missed anything. And until next time, remember to be kind with theorizing and be willing to hear out other people's theories, and to be friendly when debating, as it's important to remember we are discussing Five Nights at Freddy's lore. Thank you for watching, and see you on the flip side.